I'm starting it live, so that's the only
Okay.
way you're going to be able to hear it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah. But it
So
will start, okay.
I should actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't hear any audio issues
All right.
last time.
I'm getting it. Cool. All right, cool. Thank you. Because I sounded so underwater last time, and I don't know why, but I sound good now, so hopefully we're fine.
All right. All right, so we are good to go. Jaden just hit me up, said he'll hop in, so let's go ahead and get this show on the road.
All right.
Welcome to the Nintendo Power Zone. We are a video cast podcast dedicated to bringing you the best Nintendo-related topics. As always, I am your host, Nice One, and joining me today is my great co-host, Blues. Welcome back to the show, man.
Good to be back, as always.
And it's good to be back on schedule, is it not?
Yeah, no, I'm liking these bi-weekly things, episodes again, yeah.
Yeah. All right, but so we got so much news to talk about. We have a great topic, possibly the biggest news topic since the bombshell of Breath of the Wild. So I don't think we should dilly-dally too much. I think we should just go ahead and slide right into the powered up news.
Yes.
And I want to start with this particular story because we talked about it a little bit last week, and I made a prediction, or not last week, but last episode, and I made a prediction that there was a reason that we were getting a specific game. So over the weekend was the Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour Finals. They crowned their first champion. The top four was all Japanese players, which, not surprised, they have our number when it comes to fighting games. But in that announcement, they announced during that tournament, they announced some new stuff. So we got the Dragon Ball FighterZ Season 2 Pass. We got new characters, Jiren and Videl, and they come out on the 31st. And then we're getting Gogeta and the new Broly from the Dragon Ball Super movie, which was awesome, by the way. But they also announced, or they showed off, Project Dragon Ball Z. And I speculated on the last episode that the reason we were getting Dragon Ball Super Heroes for the Nintendo Switch was because we wouldn't be getting Project Dragon Ball Z on the Switch. And of course, they show this really nice trailer, really great art style. And if you look at the consoles it's coming out on, it's going to be released on Steam, PS4, Xbox One, no Switch. The reason I want to talk about this story is because this game is being developed with the Unreal Engine, which the Switch is capable of running. And in fact, Dragon Ball FighterZ runs on the Unreal Engine. So I do not understand why this particular game did not get, called up for the Switch. I feel like the Switch would be maybe not the best looking console to play it on, but definitely the most, accessible system to play it on, seeing as how you can play this game on the go. It is an RPG. The Switch has become, we talked about this last episode, the Switch has become the place for RPGs. So it's kind of weird that this game just kind of got put on the back burner. Maybe it's going to get a Switch release later on down the road. I'm just a little bummed out. Like, I know you're not a huge Dragon Ball fan, but like just out of like, it's weird, especially after, what we went through to get a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ. We waited longer than any of the other consoles. And as awesome as I think it is that Dragon Ball Super Dragon Ball Heroes is coming to the Switch in the West, I don't necessarily know if that makes up for not having, a core Dragon Ball game on the other consoles.
I mean, so even though the Switch can run Unreal, I'm sure there's maybe some other reason why it is. Maybe it's the processing power. Maybe it's something to do with, I don't think the controls, but something to do with how the Switch isn't, your standard console. It might not be able to functionally do something, I guess.
Possibly.
Beyond that, I don't think it makes up for not getting a Switch release. The fact we're getting Dragon Ball Supers, I don't think that makes up for it. But also, like, I find it really interesting that, Bandai Namco is actually giving us this to make it up for us. that we're not getting it. Because if I was, a game company, I wouldn't care. We can't put it on the system. We don't need to do something extra to make it up for these people, but they did, and I think that's pretty cool that Namco Bandai did that.
True. But if we're gonna move into, we can use this to transition into our next story, and that the Assassin's Creed titles are all being ported to the Switch. The Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation Collection, which pretty much a remastered version of Assassin's Creed 3. It's gonna look very nice, and not just continuing with the Ubisoft thing is that Ubisoft put Starlink on the Switch last year, and while it had some graphical downgrades, they put the game on there, and as you brought up last episode, they made it the definitive version of Starlink. So it's just weird that Bandai Namco gave us a consolation prize. Now, granted, great consolation prize because it's a game that's never been released in the Americas. So I'm happy to get the game, but the fact that it comes at the expense of another game, maybe a newer game that could potentially be better, that kind of burns me a little bit. But yeah, moving on. Like we just brought it up, Assassin's Creed coming to the Nintendo Switch. This was rumored for a while, and then some box art came out from a German retailer called MediaMarkt. And this isn't the first Ubisoft leak that, like, Ubisoft has to plug up some holes. Like, if they were a boat, they would have sank a long time ago.
Yeah, I'll agree with that much. I find it kind of weird that we're getting Liberation. So I'm not sure exactly what it is we're getting now, because you said it was a remaster. My understanding was that Liberation
3 plus the Liberation remaster.
Plus Liberation, okay.
Yeah, it's like two titles in one.
Okay. Because what originally when I saw this though, the big thing that kind of stood out for me is that why 3? 3 was actually a launch title on the Wii U. It didn't do so hot, but it was a Wii U launch title at the time. But since then, we've gotten 4, and 4 has gotten like the highest reviews out of any recent Assassin's Creed, to my knowledge.
I'm fairly certain it's because it's just the easiest to port, because they've already ported it.
Done it on the Wii U?
Before. Yeah.
That makes sense.
The Wii U,
that was...
As underpowered as the Wii U was, it was capable of outputting that game in 1080p, 60 frames per second, yada, yada, yada. So I'm pretty sure there's like, hey, let's just cash in on this one more time. And it's weird because this game is also kind of, this is on the streaming platform that they have going in Japan for the Switch.
With Resident Evil 7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, correct?
Yeah. So it's just weird. I mean, glad to have these games on the Switch, There's no such thing as a terrible Assassin's Creed game. There are bad ones, but terrible, I wouldn't say that. Assassin's Creed 3, definitely not the best of the bunch, though. Yeah, I would have preferred 4 or,
but
Black Flag.
But yeah, I was thinking that what you were saying earlier, the fact that this was already ported to the Wii U was something that 4 was on Wii U. 4 was on Wii U, like, when it came out.
Don't know. I don't understand Ubisoft's thinking. I don't. It's a cash grab.
I think it's a cash grab, but if it's a cash grab, go with 4. Everyone loved 4. Almost no one liked 3. 3, I liked 3, but like story-wise, everyone hated like the entire Desmond trilogy. But
now I'm not too familiar with the Liberation aspect of this.
To my knowledge, it is a Vita title. I haven't played it. It's a Vita title with the first female assassin in the series. She is like freeing the slaves or something like that.
Okay,
I don't quite know the details.
I totally remember that now. I did not play that one because it came out on the Vita. Shout outs to my friend who bought the Vita. But yeah, you know what? That sucks. I mean, and because I remember it now, and it was an exclusive Vita title, so the fact that an exclusive game getting ported over to the Switch, not a good look. I mean, I know the Vita is officially dead now, but still not a great look. I totally forgot about that particular spinoff.
Yeah, I heard it was like a fairly good, like Assassin's Creed game though, but I don't know. I never played it.
So, not a whole lot to say other than it's coming, and I guess if you're a fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise, be on the lookout for that. But next is some exciting news. there's a new
Yes.
Splatoon demo coming out, and it's a week-long demo, which is weird in and of itself that, 2 years after the launch of the game that they want to push it so hard. But also, we're getting new DLC, and they said they were done with DLC back in December with the last update. We're going to be getting 10 new weapons, and that's great. We're getting a brand new NZAP, which is the NZAP 83, which is, the NZAP that they should have been there for a while. We're getting new Splatling guns. We're getting a new Bamboozler.
These are the Sheldon Selects, right?
Yes, the Sheldon
Sticks. Okay.
Yeah. So we're getting a whole bunch. So we're getting the Aerospray PG, the NZAP 83, the Grim Range Blaster, the Cherry H3 Nozzle Nose, the Soda Slosher, the Heavy Splatling Remix, the Sploosh-O-Matic 7, the Fresh Swiffer, Permanent Ink Burst, and the Bamboozler 14 Mark III. So lots of great weapons. I'm a little upset because I'm a roller and there's no roller here. I know that the brushes are technically in the roller class, but I hate the brushes. I don't like with them more. Basically, if it didn't get a Kenza weapon, it got part of the Sheldon's picks.
I'm happy that we're getting these, and I got a lot of my big picks. I got the Splatling, I got the Swiffer, which is my sniper of choice, and I'm happy because I got my 2 favorite weapons.
Yeah, which is nice. So as far as the week-long demo is concerned, these are the most that will be available. If you sign up, if you download this demo, you get a free week of Nintendo Switch Online, which is nice. That way you can actually play the game online. You'll even have the ability to transfer the save data into a full game if you decide to make the purchase. So that's really good. So all that progress that you'll unlock in that demo, if you decide to go ahead and take the plunge and buy Splatoon, will carry over. And you will have access to Turf War, Ranked Battles, and Salmon Run. So you're pretty much getting a mini version of the game for a week. And I think that's really awesome. This is going to happen on March 26th, and it will last till April 1st. So if you haven't taken the plunge into Splatoon 2, highly recommend you download this demo because Splatoon 2 is a lot of fun. And it's definitely one of Nintendo's evergreen titles. They're definitely going to be able to, keep making money off this game. And even though there aren't any more updates after Sheldon's picks that we know of, I mean, this is a completely different game than when it launched. So you should have a crap ton of fun playing this. So yeah, I think this is great news.
I mean, so considering Splatoon 2 didn't have a lot of actual demos. They had the first demo way back when, before the game was even close to being out. They had the very first Splatfest and like one other, right? And then for ARMS, there was a couple different test punches. Even after
test punches for ARMS before launch.
Before launch, and there was some after the game came out too, I'm pretty sure. And so I feel like they both got about around the same amount. I feel like ARMS had a bit more free demos, test punches, whatever, world splat tests. What Testfire, yeah.
Test punches with ARMS.
ARMS, and then Testfire for Splatoon. But I was always like, well, all of those demos happened so fast, you didn't get a chance to see what the game has become. Those were so early. Back when early game Splatoon was, early game, people compared it a lot more to Splatoon 1, but with Salmon Run. And now it is entirely at the end of its life cycle, not comparable at all to Splatoon 1. It is an entirely improved successor to Splatoon 1.
And this goes, if we go back to the thought process when Splatoon 2 was first announced, nobody believed this game was a true sequel. It was all, this is just an enhanced remake of Splatoon 1. They didn't add enough to justify this being an entirely separate game. But if you look at the game now, you have, all the new stages, all the DLC gear and weapons. You have the Octo expansion, which was fantastic. I love the Octo expansion. You just have a whole new game that completely overshadows what the first game was. And, man, honestly, I kind of want them to keep doing updates for this game. I know the game has really kind of outlasted its life cycle. As far as shooter games are concerned, it's not often that you see a shooter game get more than a year of support, because by that time, other companies have moved on to the next iteration.
Yes,
you don't play Call of Duty 3, for 2 years. You play Call of Duty 3, and then you're playing like a Call of Duty Black Ops game, and then you're playing Call of Duty 4 the year after that. Like the yearly cycle of most shooter games does not apply to Splatoon. So you're getting an evergreen title with Splatoon.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we're only going to see one Splatoon game per console.
That was my theory too. I want to take a step back, and I've just forgotten what I was going to say about my step back though. Oh yeah, so you mentioned all the content there is in Splatoon, but Splatoon has become a very expensive game to play. I want to add, so you're getting $60 purchase for the game itself, not to mention the $300 console. You're getting $20 presumably a year for online that's needed to play almost everything in the game, and then you're looking at a $20 Octo expansion pass, and so it's become a fairly expensive game to play over its existence too.
True, but at least the majority of the content updates are free, and the Octo expansion is,
a whole nother campaign.
Yeah, you don't need it to complete. You don't need it. Doesn't have. Even though there is story weight to that particular expansion, like it is 100% optional. You do not have to play the Octo expansion
unless you have to play as an Octoling for your life.
Which I haven't gone back to playing as a squid since the Octo expansion.
I don't think I've touched an Octoling since I beat it.
Oh man, I haven't played as a squid. I like the octopus designs better. I just love that Octo fro.
But then I had another point I wanted to make after, and now I've forgotten what that was. What were you saying before I talked about this? I forgot.
Just about how it's a completely different game.
Completely different game.
And we were talking about
how updates, yes. So the studio that is making Splatoon 2 is behind Animal Crossing as well. So we're looking at, a game that is very longevity, and it has its own sense of longevity in Animal Crossing, where it's a whole calendar year is just half the fun in Animal Crossing. And I'm sure we'll be getting some kind of updates in Animal Crossing, maybe not to the extent of Splatoon, because Animal Crossing doesn't need that as much, but I'm sure we'll get some, they've been doing it for years with Animal Crossing, with new furniture items coming in every month, etc. And so I think we can see some stuff like that, maybe more akin to Splatoon this time, but maybe not on that same scale. But if they're getting that support for Animal Crossing as well, do we expect to take longer for a potential Splatoon 3?
Right now I'm of the mind that we're not getting another Splatoon game
on this console.
Yeah, I think we'll see another, whatever Nintendo's next console iteration is, before we see a third Splatoon. Although I wouldn't mind having multiple titles on this console. Honestly, I wouldn't mind having any Nintendo franchises per console. I've kind of grown weary of we get one Mario game per console, one 3D Mario game per console, or one 3D Zelda game per console, or, well, this game didn't make it for the console, so we'll release it on both consoles. I'm sick of that. I kind of, I get it, and we're going to talk about this later. Nintendo has, quality control issues that they want everything to be perfect. They don't want to release an imperfect game.
But
yeah, it gets kind of rough, waiting between console generations. And on top of that, sometimes they start making a game for a console, and then the new console comes out, and then we are stuck in this weird transitional period where the new console doesn't have any games because they started development for the newer console, and that means they have to change things because things get different as development changes on as they change development for the system, it changes the direction of the development overall. And then we wait, and we still don't have Pikmin 4. Stuff like that. We still don't have Pikmin 4 because of issues like that. And they said that game is done.
I'm pretty sure Pikmin 4 was scrapped, similar to Metroid Prime 4 being scrapped. But we'll talk about that later. So I like how you mentioned we only get one 3D Mario, one Zelda, one game per console generation, which has tended to be the case. You are correct, but we're going back to your Black Ops Call of Duty example. We were given 2 main like Call of Duty games in a console cycle and 2 Black Ops games, give or take, a console cycle. And so maybe Splatoon, being Nintendo's only real shooter that they have, would maybe follow something akin to that style. As well as we've heard from the Nintendo president before that we want Splatoon to be as big as Mario. The only way to see them being as big as Mario is with the kind of support of multiple games, whether it's spin-offs like a Splatoon RPG, Splatoon racing game, Splatoon something that's not the main game. You can see spin-offs, but seeing more games, I think that's the only real way Splatoon could become as big as Mario. And so I think we're going to see more Splatoon games eventually on the Switch. Maybe not full-fledged Splatoon titles, though.
So as of 2018, there have been 6 Call of Duty games on the PS4. 6.
Boom. Yeah. So I feel like Nintendo needs to sort of get on top of that kind of production. Like you've said, they had that quality control issue, which has been holding them back. But we can't, like, they've played most of their big hand for the Switch already. They've played their 3D Mario and their 3D Zelda. Granted, that's also the Wii U Zelda. I don't know. But it's...
I expect to get another Zelda game this console generation because of that specific reason. I do not think that the Switch won't have its own exclusive Zelda game.
Okay.
So, yeah, because when that happened on the GameCube...
You got port,
when that happened with the GameCube and the Wii, you got Twilight Princess on the Wii, but then...
And Skyward Sword.
Yeah, you got Skyward Sword later on down the line, so I expect one more. Although I expect it to be different in the sense that this new Zelda game will most likely be using the same graphics and physics engine of Breath of the Wild.
Okay, that is
I think they're going to recycle that because they spent years developing that engine, and it would be a shame to put it to waste on just one particular game. I think they've said as much that they're going to reuse that engine simply because of the time it took to develop it. And they haven't done that since Majora's Mask. That's the only other time that they've recycled a game engine like that. So I expect there to be one more Zelda game on the Switch. But
I just sort of feel like Nintendo's going to try and get with the times and push multiple 3D Marios, multiple Zeldas, and potentially multiple Splatoons on the same console here. I think it just makes too much sense not to try and push out multiple big hits like this, especially when they've played their hand early. They have much more they can do to get these series boosted, such as Splatoon.
True that. All right. Before we move on to the next story, welcome to the show, Jaden.
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here. Sorry I'm a bit late. Didn't hear my phone go off and got stuck in the middle of some business. So now I'm here, and you guys made some really good points. But I think you're both right. I think they do need to release some more, but they also got to be careful not to get into the trap that both Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed have fallen into, which is series fatigue. So
too much, yeah.
Right. Too much of a good thing can always be bad.
I mean, I feel like with Nintendo, like you were saying before, that quality control is still going to be there. So we can see more of the titles coming out, but I feel like they're not going to push out 6 Zeldas in 6 years. I think that's not a Nintendo thing to do. Maybe in 20 years from now, they might start that trend, but not anytime soon, no.
Right.
Sure. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the next one. So Legendary Pictures has reportedly already started working on the sequel for Detective Pikachu. So maybe Detective Pikachu? No, anybody?
I like it. That's good. I get that.
But yeah. So this movie hasn't come out yet, but the positive response for the trailer has given them, the thought process that, hey, let's go ahead and start doing this. But then there's another rumor that they're also working on a spinoff that may feature Ash Ketchum.
Oh God, why?
It's just the way it is. But yeah, if it's true, it looks like they've hired the writers for 22 Jump Street and the Cloverfield Paradox. Now,
wait. Cloverfield Paradox. Hold on.
Yeah, that's the one that released exclusively for Netflix last year.
That was the one that people hated, right?
That's the one that everybody hated, and I'm like, it's a Cloverfield movie. Get over yourselves. It's actually not that bad.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was the right Cloverfield movie, because I remember one of them people really hated.
Yeah, the Cloverfield Paradox is the one that was supposed to get a theatrical release, and then they were like, this movie isn't like what we wanted it to be, and it barely ties into Cloverfield. So, hey, Netflix, you want this? You want this hot piece of shit? And Netflix said, man, we take what we can get over here. Set it on down. Here's a couple $1 million.
But then they'll cancel a whole bunch of Marvel series. So what are you doing?
Now, if you weren't already skeptical about the 22 Jump Street, the Cloverfield Paradox, these are also the people who are writing the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic.
So, yeah.
Movie of the year.
So think about it. If this first movie is good, you can instantly expect the sequel to tank.
Yeah, I think because also with the first movie, you're looking at a similar story to the first game, to the game. We don't have a Detective Pikachu 2 game, so they're going to be making their own original story.
That game is basically ends with a giant to be continued sign anyway. It's like it's an incomplete. Like they leave the game open for there to be more adventures with Pikachu. That being said, we're not getting a sequel to that game. Let us be honest.
No.
As cool as that amiibo is, and as much fun as I had with that game did not move. Like that.
It's not coming out anytime soon.
I don't
do it. I mean, maybe like 3 or 4 years from now, but not anytime soon.
What they should do though is port that game over to the Switch and actually give it a fighting chance, because it's not that bad of a game. It's actually fun. It's I know it's
fun.
I enjoyed it. I know it's like I know it's basically baby's first Professor Layton Phoenix Wright game, but I had fun with it.
That'd be perfect for me then, because I hate the Layton games. I like the concept, but I just don't have the patience.
So I don't know if I want this. I don't know if this is gonna be a good movie or not. We all know that video game movies have a tendency to suck, and I don't expect this to be any different. Yes, it's cool that you got Ryan Reynolds, but Doom had The Rock when The Rock was like at the most peak rockiness of the rocks. So,
oh, you're right, huh? Holy crap, I'm old.
Yeah, so not even like A-list celebrities can actually save video game movies. So let's just keep that in mind. Just because he's Deadpool doesn't mean this is going to be good. And I think they found a good look for the movie. But just because a Star Wars movie looks great doesn't mean it is great.
Force Awakens.
Hashtag all Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Oh. It's a bit much, but okay.
Yeah. Star Wars movies are the most overrated piece of donkey trash I've ever seen.
Some are better than others.
I agree. Some are better than others, but I mean, a dirty diaper is dirty diaper no matter how, you display it on a table.
But some dirty diapers are less dirty than other diapers.
Exactly.
There you go.
You've got your hard poops and you've got your wet poops.
Stop.
Now, this is the Nintendo Poopcast. Thanks for joining us.
The first 3 prequel movies are all the wet poops.
I actually really liked one. I'll be honest. I'm in the minority, but I actually thought it was pretty good. People just give it a lot of shit because Jar Jar was in it, and like, well, if you remove Jar Jar, like, there's actually some pretty decent plot points and some pretty decent pacing. It's just that you've got some comic character doing negligible things in the background. So
I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard they're making a documentary about the guy who played Jar Jar Binks, and I'm like, you should just not.
See, the one thing that I wanted to happen with Star Wars that I thought would have been really fantastic in episode, 7 or 8, is they would have revealed that Jar Jar was a Sith Lord. And that would have been fantastic. I'd be like, okay, everything makes sense.
Is that true?
Yeah, that was
Jar
one of,
Jar
like,
was the Sith Lord.
That was one of the like fan rumors that like it would have been super funny if he was the Sith Lord.
It would have been funny.
Right. And it would make sense because like this entire like being an idiot is kind of an act thing, and he was actually really behind everything all along. That would have been, I don't know. I thought it would have been a really great twist.
We've gone so far off the rest.
Yes, we have.
This is what we do in the Poopcast, so it's cool.
So, moving on.
Yes.
The Nintendo Switch sold 10.5 million units in the US thus far. So, that's pretty big considering like the total numbers floating somewhere around like the 20 million mark. Mm-hmm. Half of those are just in the US. That's crazy. 5.6 million were sold throughout the course of 2018. That's a lot. That's up 16% from 2017. Mm-hmm. And the Nintendo Switch was the best-selling hardware of the year And in the month of December, it sold more than the PS4 and the Xbox One combined, and it was the best month for any console this generation.
Mm-hmm.
Switch is killing it. I mean, granted, in November they released a Pokemon game, and in December they released
Smash Bros.
Ultimate.
Sure,
the Switch was going to sell for Christmas.
But the same thing can be said about last year. Last year they also released Mario Odyssey, which was also a fantastic game, and Xenoblade 2. So Nintendo's got it down. I think, at least for now, the past couple of years they've had it really good winter launches to really sell the console, and we'll see what happens this next year.
Yeah, this year is going to be interesting because I think a lot of us pegged Metroid as that December game.
I was right about to say that. Correct.
We all that was what I pegged it as. I thought in December, that's when we get Metroid. We're going to talk about that in our topic of the month. I do not want to get too far ahead. We got one more story to talk about, so let's just go ahead and get into that. Oh, but yeah, great news for Nintendo before we move on. 10.5 million units in just one region. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And our last story. I bring this story up because I want to trigger a couple people. I fully intend to trigger people.
Oh yeah, that's our favorite. The Nintendo Trigger Cast.
Exactly. Nintendo announces a tournament series for Super Smash Bros. And Splatoon 2. This is awesome news if that's the headline, right? If that's the only thing you hear about the headline is that they announced a tournament series.
Mm-hmm.
Where things start to go off the rails. Both of these tournaments are Battlefield tournaments or Battlefied tournaments, which, don't get me wrong, I think Battlefied is an excellent service to set up some tournaments, online.
Mm-hmm.
But for a tournament series, I think that's bull. I just think that's utter bull.
What is Battlefied for those people who don't know?
Battlefied is a online web browser that allows you to set up little online national tournaments. So a couple years ago, when Splatoon was about to shutter its way off on the Wii, they had one tournament to determine which teams would represent what regions at the Splatoon World Championships at E3. That's the US team that ended up winning the whole thing. Their name escapes me right now. They lost to the Japanese team at E3 this past year. Anyhow, Battlefield just allows you to easily set up tournaments through their browser, and Nintendo and them have a really nice working relationship, and that's why they continue to use them. My problem is, if you start to look at every other tournament series for every other fighting game or shooting game or Dota style game, those tournaments are held locally,
right?
And they're streamed, through the venue and broadcast. Now, this tournament for for Smash will be streamed. I don't know how they're going to stream the Splatoon side of things because I don't think there's a spectator mode in Splatoon 2.
That'll be interesting.
But there definitely is one in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That's the first issue. I think Battlefield is a wonderful platform for for smaller based online tournaments, not something that you're going to pimp out as your tournament series.
Right.
Then we come to the rule set. Items on.
Yeah, buddy.
7 minutes. And Smash Ball on. Now, I think these things are fun, but the problem is that this is not what the competitive Smash scene plays.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a tournament series that stands out like the Dragon Ball FighterZ tournament series or the Street Fighter tournament series or even the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite series, you want to have the rule set that appeals to the hardcore demographic because that's the demographic that keeps your game alive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't mind the Smash mechanic in the as being turned on.
The Smash meter,
but the Smash meter would have worked better than the Smash Ball.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as items are concerned, yeah, items are fun, but I want to when I'm playing with Smash with items, I'm playing with large groups of people, couch co-op. In an online tournament, I feel like this is the wrong rule set to have. And I think this is why, even when Nintendo takes 2 steps forward, they take 2 steps back.
Right.
Because it's just, like we're looking at a great idea, wonderful support from Nintendo, which is what the Smash community has never had. Support. They don't get the financing that Capcom gives its tournament series, or any other fighting tournament series for that matter. And now you have this, you're going outside of the box, doing it online, and then you mess with the rule set and you make it completely incompatible with anybody who wants to play the game at an extraordinarily high level. It means that you cannot take this particular tournament series seriously. Now with Splatoon, this is less of an issue, because Splatoon, you're just going to end up playing rank modes, and the rules are established within the confines of the game automatically. You do not get to alter the rules in Splatoon. They work the way they work. 5 minutes for a rank match, 3 minutes for a turf war. Whoever covers the most turf, or puts the clams in the basket, or rides the the tower, or takes the rainmaker, or plants the splash zone. Those are established rules that cannot be fundamentally changed in any way, shape, or form. For Splatoon, this is not an issue whatsoever. And Splatoon, their tournament series has thrived online anyway. It's really hard to set up a local, Splatoon thing because of everybody needing an individual setup. But for Smash, much easier to run a local. And you can't tell me that Nintendo can't, hook themselves up with some of the larger regionals or nationals. Like, hey, you want to be part of this tournament series? Compete at CEO, compete at EVO, compete at any of the 50 billion regionals that they have in SoCal and NorCal. So many different places and so many different opportunities to sponsor a real, true tournament series.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's an awesome idea if you're just reading the headline. Nintendo announces a tournament series for Super Smash Bros. But the further you dig into it, the less appealing this tournament series looks for the Smash side of it. As far as the Splatoon side, I think they're set. Just get those guys online, ready to play. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I think.
Yeah. Go. Okay, so I guess I'll trigger people first, Brett. Blues. I actually kind of like the rule set with item-ons, just because I know how pissed off the like hardcore fan base is going to be, because I mean they're already complaining that they have to upgrade from what is it, Melee, right? So it's really going to piss them off even more. And so part of me, like, I enjoy the Schadenfreude behind that. They just to see them suffer. But like from an objective standpoint, you're probably right. They probably should turn off items and turn on only Smash Meter. But I don't know.
So I'm going to be the only one defending this here. I think Nintendo is trying to go for accessibility with these tournaments. That's why they're using Battle Fee and the online format instead of locals, which I kind of disagree with too. But you're looking at with the rule set, you're looking at not bad. Okay, it's bad, but it's just different. It is bad. I will say it's bad, but it's not anything you can't overlook if you really want to participate. You're looking at this is the official Nintendo Smash Bros. Tournament series, which, like you said before, we have not gotten that kind of support at all before. But they're doing the rules a bit different, which isn't bad, I think. I mean, it's not what the mainstream competitive community kind of accepts. But I don't think it's impossible. I think the one rule that kind of ticks me is that they use it to time. I would have preferred stock time more than anything, or maybe just coin battle. Coin battle was the only true competitive mode. You can't change my mind. But I mean, you can learn how to use items. You can learn how to use Final Smash Brawls. Because the argument is that they're not like true tests of skill. I get a home run bat. It's how are you going to overcome that? But yes.
The last point I want to make in this tournament series is that there was a woeful neglect of ARMS for this.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd be curious to see
Nintendo's neglect of ARMS in a tournament series is woefully like it's bad. It's neglectful. It's like, hey, we're done with this franchise, regardless of how many people bought it, which was like $1.7 million, which made it a hit. You know, considering it was the first in its
series. It's a new IP. It's
a new IP.
Weird.
Sold a crap ton.
Right.
Like the fact that they're choosing to not include it in this tournament series is mind-boggling. I'm like, hey, why? You have 3 strong competitive games. Like
4 if you count Pokken.
Well, 4
Pokken.
To go even further, I think you could have included Mario Tennis Aces in this as well.
Okay.
Fair enough. I think you could have included. There's a number of competitive games that Nintendo could have put in this tournament series, and they're focusing on maybe the two most popular. But that's the problem, is that they're focusing on the 2 that are the most popular. It would be nice to breathe a second life into some of these other games, like Mario Tennis Aces, which I love that game. I think that's a fantastic game, but it's underrepresented by Nintendo. Like, they basically had that one initial push with advertising and marketing for this game, and then they left it be. And the game is getting continuously updated all the time. We just got new characters announced yesterday.
What, for ARMS?
No, for Mario Tennis.
Oh, Mario Tennis.
Pauline coming, Boom Boom coming.
Right,
Link has been data mined, potentially. Probably not coming because it's Camelot, but Link has been data mined for the game.
Yeah, so I mean, there's just more opportunity. There's room for other games in this tournament series, but it is what it is. I'm not, like I said, I think it's a great idea that Nintendo wants to run some tournament series stuff.
Right.
The problem comes in the execution. I think before it's even happened, it's been poorly executed.
I mean, one last point I want to kind of mention is that, like, the community will make do with this. You look at Pokemon. Pokemon has, its unofficial tournament series, Smogon. Then there's VGC, which is the official one. And so, a lot of people don't like, well, why is VGC doubles and only 4 Pokemon? That's so weird and dumb. And then you have Smogon, which is a more traditional 6v6, 1v1. People like it, etc. But people make do. One is officially sponsored, one's not. People have their preferences, but at the end of the day, Pokemon fans come together as Pokemon fans, and they'll do both. They make do with it,
So my big concern is that the Smash Brothers fan base is a little bit more toxic than the Pokemon. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with
toxic, but I think you're right still.
Yeah.
But I think they'll still continue to support Evo and other things because they've been giving a bit of support here and there with the bigger fighting game tournaments. Like, we've seen announcements come from there. We've seen demos, etc. And potentially, probably not, but we could see ARMS at Evo.
Well, I think the thing that bums me out most about this is the same day that Nintendo announced their tournament series, Capcom updated their tournament series. They rebranded their Capcom Cup into something that includes a more inclusive rule set and doubles fighting. So I'm like, wow, Capcom found a way to breathe life into an underperforming Street Fighter game.
Right.
And Nintendo has pretty much a smash hit with Smash, pun intended, and their tournament series leaves much to be desired, in my opinion.
Right.
It's weird. Like I said, I applaud the thought process. I look at the execution and I'm like, not the best way to maneuver this tournament around. You could have done better. Nintendo, you need to do better. You want to run a tournament series, run it proper. All you have to do is just throw a little bit of streaming cash to these major tournaments. Make your own little trophies. You already do that. You made a belt for ARMS. You've made multiple championship belts for ARMS, and championship belts cost a crap ton of money. So get on it. Come on, let's do this better. Let's legitimize it. Take these games to the next level, and have like some real competition. Like, yeah, play is fun, but competition can be just as fun. I don't know. It is what it is. I really have nothing else to say about this, other than I'm just disappointed.
I'm sure Nintendo will. It's their first venture into this too, really. So as time goes on, they might adjust it, etc., to be more what the fans desire. You never know.
For that.
Right.
All right. So, guys, let's take like a 2-minute break, and let's go ahead and talk about our topic of the bi-weekly period. And this is a good one. This is a really good one. I expect us to have some really great thoughts on this.
Do you guys want to do some weird news real quick?
Weird news.
Yeah. So here, the weird news of the week, the past 2 weeks, is the petition going on the internet, petitioning for Shaggy from Scooby-Doo to be in the next Mortal Kombat 11.
I signed that petition so fast.
I signed it so fast. And what about you? Nice one. Oh, I guess he stepped away.
Okay.
No, I'm still here.
Well,
I have no
his
words.
head. He is ashamed of us for supporting.
I'm not ashamed of you. I'm just ashamed of like this is Waluigi all over again.
It really is, but
yeah.
There's a push for Waluigi for a reason, you know.
Like, I have no words. I guess people have been reading that like Walking Dead style Scooby-Doo comic book, and that's why they want it.
So the memes have been around for a while. It's been around. I believe it's been around since like 2000, late 2016, early 2017. And I don't know how it came about. My first exposure to Shaggy's like power level meme was somebody drew him fighting like Super Saiyan Blue Goku.
Oh Lord!
And he's just like. He did the typical Shaggy voice, like this is only 1% of my power level, dude, or some shit like that. And I guess it's just blowing up from there. It's been kind of an underground meme, and so I think that's where this all comes from. It may have deeper roots, but that's my exposure to it. And I think it's funny. I think they should do it. I think they should put Shaggy in a fighting game for sure.
I guess if Negan can be in Tekken 7 and the Ninja Turtles can be in Injustice, Shaggy can be in Mortal Kombat.
So Ed Boon has commented on this. He's made, I think,
yeah, right.
Yes, he's made 2 tweets about Shaggy in Mortal Kombat, and they don't say no.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed, Ed Boon, make it happen, please.
Right.
I feel like the big issue would probably be just Hanna-Barbera and like Warner Bros. And like, hey, I mean, Shaggy could be the fighting game and all, but he can't be breaking people's spines and spleens. That's kind of a no-no for Shaggy. He's non-violent pacifist kind of guy. He can unmask them, maybe, but I think that's where the real issues will come in. The PG character into a definitely not PG game. I think that's where the issue comes from.
Right. I don't know. I still think it'd be kind of funny. Like they only give him
hilarious.
What is it? Friendship fatalities or stuff like that. Or they could put him in Injustice. Or I wouldn't mind seeing him in Smash Brothers either. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay. I mean, there was going back to that sort of meme though. There was something similar. It's like Timmy Turner is like the most powerful character. It's like Goku challenges Timmy Turner, and the Timmy Turner's like, I wish Goku was defeated, and he just wins. Which I'd like to point out that it's against the rules very clearly. The rules state you cannot maim, harm, or like hurt any person with fairy magic, and then any other like loophole for that was like also in the rules. I don't know. I looked it up, and I'm like, all right, here's the list of all of fairy godparents' rules. You can't do that shit. Come on. But that was about the same time frame. In terms of personal news, so I just caught a shiny Bulbasaur right before we started this episode.
Nice.
I'm training him. His name is Thickums. And also Piranha Plant dropped today, but more importantly, Incineroar got buffed.
Right. About the Piranha Plant, there's some stuff floating around the internet if you haven't heard about it. Apparently, some people have been claiming that if you play as Piranha Plant in All-Star mode, it will corrupt your save data. So be careful with that. We haven't heard any official word from Nintendo yet. So do it at your own risk.
I mean, but it's a great All-Star mode. I did it. It's great. Don't worry.
Right.
You got nothing to lose. It's really fun All-Star mode this time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it for the weird news.
Weird.
All right. So I am good to go if you guys just want to slide right into the topic.
Slide.
Hold on one second.
All right.
My dogs are being weird.
My dog's being a bit weird too.
The little one is taunting the older one with a bone.
That sounds like a dog thing to do.
Yeah, it does. Right, Scooter?
All right. Okay, welcome back to the show. If you guys are now just joining us, we're going to go ahead and slide into our topic for this bi-weekly period, and it's a good one. So since the Switch launched back in 2017, Nintendo's had an amazing track record of announcing games and launching them right on time. They seem to want to correct the mistakes that they made with the Wii U, which was plagued with numerous game delays during the console's 5-year lifespan. The delays literally lasted until Breath of the Wild, which ultimately ended up being simultaneously launched on the Wii U and the Switch. But since then, all the major first-party games that were announced for the Switch, including Super Mario Odyssey and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, have come out on time. There has only been one exception, and that was Yoshi's Crafted World, which is going to be coming out on March, I believe, in March.
Soon.
So you can imagine my surprise when I woke up on Friday morning.
Oh, did he freeze?
Oh, looks like he's having technical difficulties.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Hey, back.
Yeah.
True that. So you can actually imagine my surprise when I woke up on Friday morning at 7:30 to find out that Nintendo had put out a very interesting video that details the delay of Metroid Prime 4. And the game is being delayed because they decided to scrap the game entirely and start from the beginning. But that's not all. They also said that Retro Studios, the development studio that helped create the Prime series, would be returning to helm this new version. So it's time to just break this down and give you guys our thoughts on what this means and Nintendo's transparency on the matter. So first things first, we got to talk about why the game was delayed. So basically, what they said was, after 2 years of development, the game is nowhere near where it needs to be. They basically said, without actually saying it, they basically said this game isn't right in any measure. Like, the controls aren't right, the graphics aren't right, this game is not ready to go. Which is saying a lot because, as we said earlier, we all pegged this as our December game for 2019.
Right.
So they decided we're not releasing this. This does not meet Nintendo's quality. We're starting over from the beginning. But we're not going to go down the same rabbit hole again. Somebody call Retro and get them back on board.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So now that being said, that's the reason why the game was delayed. What are your thoughts on that particular reason? This not meeting Nintendo standards.
It's interesting to me that they use that term because there's a number of things that it could mean. Like, in which area did it not meet the standards? Was it is it only one area? Was it all areas? I mean, so if we remember some of the last Metroid game that was released, right, which was what, Other M, right?
Yes.
Fans lambasted that game because of the portrayal of Samus Aran. So, I'm wondering if maybe it was just kind of like a story area where they really just didn't like it, and they didn't like the level design. Maybe they didn't like where they took Samus the character, and so maybe it's just from that standpoint. And that's my optimistic outlook, because if they did something like that, then the new development time will be shorter, right?
I would be inclined to agree with you if not for the fact that Nintendo has on numerous occasions stated that they work on gameplay elements first,
right,
and then and the mechanics, and then work story around the gameplay and the story. They work the story around the gameplay and mechanics of the game. So we don't even know if this game got as far as story development.
Right. And so, that's one of the things that would be really curious to actually figure out which part of the game development process they were really dissatisfied with, right?
So moving on, this bugs me. Before we move on, I thought that Nintendo was exceptionally quiet about Metroid after that teaser trailer with the logo. I thought they were way more quiet with Breath of the Wild. With Breath of the Wild, we were getting stuff for we got stuff for 3 E3s before they're like, yeah, we're not bringing it back to E3.
Right.
So it was odd to me that like nothing was coming out about this game, and I thought it was really odd that Retro wasn't behind it. So we might as well just use that to transition to Retro's coming back to work on this game. The problem being is that none of the original staff that worked on the Metroid Prime series works at Retro currently. Not a single one of them. They've all gone on to work or create new development studios. So does Retro coming back to make this game actually mean anything? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, are they the same guys that did the Donkey Kong stuff?
I would imagine so. I mean, I think Retro only has about 50 to 60 employees. They're not a big studio.
Right. But I mean, even the newer teams, they still have a pretty decent track record. So, maybe it might spell some bad things, but it may not.
So you just mentioned that even the newer development teams have a good track record. I don't like Retro's track record as a whole for their entire history. Although they've had a lot of successes, they're only 2 real base, like their IP or their original things that they've made. They've only had 2. We've seen sequels since then. We've had 3 Metroid Prime games, but you only really have the one that was a big hit at the beginning. You can work from there. You have a baseline with the first game, and same thing with Donkey Kong Country. You can improve from there with Tropical Freeze. And so there's only 2 real games that, could have been a risk. And that's not a very high track record, especially when you look at the fact that, like you said before, all of the Metroid Prime guys are done. They don't work there anymore. So then you only have 1 real track record thing for that studio. And then, like, back when Retro first started, this is back with the old guys, though, they didn't have they were in crisis up until Metroid Prime 1. They had like 3 whole projects they were working on, and all 3 of them tanked. And then Shigeru Miyamoto said, well, why don't you take this one that tanked and just turn it into Metroid?
Yeah, basically what had happened was, in order for them to get on track, they sent somebody from Japan to ensure that they stayed on track.
Right.
They basically sent the manager from Japan to be like, look, you guys are just hemorrhaging money, and we need to make money back. You have to put something out, so you need a more developed plan. And the reason that game even came out is because Nintendo first party stepped in and was like, let's get this shit together.
And so overall, I don't think Retro has that big of a track record to really go off of, and it's not entirely good if you look at that very early stage.
Right.
So I don't think Retro has maybe I don't know if they'll be good or bad with this game. However, I think what they're mostly going for with sending it to Retro is probably the fact that it's an American studio, and that the scrapped build of Metroid Prime 4 is more Japanese influenced than they might like it to be. And
right.
They know that the fans of Metroid Prime 4 will not like that more Japanese influence, maybe, is my theory.
I mean, let's say that one of the things that Western developers do well, even if you may not like Western development games, which I'm kind of burnt out of personally, is that they do shooters well. They know how to make them, and they know how to do first-person shooters quite well. And they all feel different than the Eastern style ones. So take, for example, even though it's not a first-person shooter, take the Metal Gear engine, right? It's a good engine. I like the engine, and I really enjoy the shooting mechanics and the way they feel. But they definitely feel different compared to Western developed shooters, such as Gears of War or Call of Duty or Battlefield. So. Maybe that's one of the things that they're trying to cultivate or take the resource. That's probably a better word for it.
True. Yeah. And if you look at like Splatoon as a third-person shooter, the closest Western developed game to Splatoon is probably Overwatch, but even then,
Yeah.
every character performs its own separate function, as
Right.
visually and as far as appeal is concerned. So Overwatch is the closest Western developed shooter to what Nintendo did with Splatoon. This kind of leads me to my next thing. Should Retro have always been the lead development studio behind the game? Knowing that the staff that was there in the beginning is no longer there now, you would have to imagine that they probably still have like some of those like developer note and maybe some of those old character models to base design stuff off of. Maybe even some story concepts for Metroid games that they, the 3 previous games that they had worked on in the past. Like, oh, we thought about taking the story here, but this was scrapped because, we couldn't fit it in the game or the technology didn't allow for it to fit. And maybe they can use some of those things to spin a new story or use some of those assets and like build them up to fit into this like new HD world that we live in. And it just makes me wonder, without all those, even without the key staff members, should Retro have been the lead development studio for this game? Because it was weird that they announced a Japanese studio for a Western style Metroid game.
I don't think Retro necessarily had to be on the project. However, I don't think it was the best choice to go with a Japanese studio. I think, Retro is optional, and I think a Japanese studio could have done it pretty well, although there is that flaw of, that Japanese influence in the shooter, which I think was an issue.
That's true. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot there, so I think we should just move into what this actually means for that unannounced Retro Studios project. As we said earlier in this discussion, Retro's not a big studio. They don't have a whole lot of like bodies to spare. Mm-hmm. So what happens to the rumors being it was a Star Fox Racer game? If that's the case, how far along was that game in development? And what does developers getting pulled from that particular project actually mean for that project?
Right.
I would have to imagine that right off the bat, it's either getting canned or just put on the back burner, or hell, they're just gonna have to work on it with a skeleton crew. Like,
my theory is that even though Retro isn't that big, I feel like since they're starting Metroid from scratch, this mystery project is at least 2 years in development, if not longer. I feel like it has to be almost done, right? And so I feel like they're probably just putting some finishing touches on the last things they need to fix. And so they don't need a whole lot of manpower for that. I think they can split into 2 different teams.
Right.
I think, especially since, they're not making too much headway early on with Metroid here because it's completely scrapped. And so it's a weird balance of you have this thing that we can just finish up and send out the door, and you have this thing that's like it's just not even there yet.
Right.
I think they can do both. I think there's a high chance of it getting scrapped, especially if it's been so quiet. But those are my 2 theories. It's dividing into small 2 teams. We're going to get that project soon, or scrapped.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, right? They definitely could divide. They'll probably divide into teams if it doesn't get scrapped, right? And so here's what we don't know: is we don't actually know what that mystery game is.
No.
Let's assume that it's another like shooter-ish game, right? They could actually take that engine that they built for that game and then use it with Metroid, and that would
that was actually my next point. It was what if this game what if the unannounced game becomes the basis for this new Metroid game?
Right, because that's how like game engines work. They can take principles that they figured out in this engine, tweak it a bit, and then use it for another IP. And if they do that, it could alleviate a lot of the development stress. So we very well could see both games released, which is something that I hope happens.
Or
now, if it is
both games released, or just that one game just being completely repurposed, and then like taking that engine, repurposing it to strictly work around Metroid.
Right. Which they could do as well, but I'm hoping they don't do that because I do like seeing more quality games released. Now, where it becomes complicated, right, is if they are doing something like a Star Fox Razor or like even a Star Fox game where it's a completely different style of game. Taking like a rail shooter engine and trying to apply it to a third person action shooter thing is obviously more difficult, and so that's where the trouble may lie.
Although it could be interesting to get a Resident Evil style Metroid game.
Or it would be really solid to see like I think it'd be super cool to see Star Fox mechanics, but using Samus's
gunship.
Yeah, gun. I don't know what the hell it's called. Does it have a name?
Gunship, I think it's just
the gunship, right?
Samus's gunship. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
That would actually give it a name. Really dope. It kind of reminded me of like the gummy sections of Kingdom Hearts games.
Kingdom Hearts, yeah.
Right, but unfortunately, with Metroid, I wouldn't be able to make my ship in the shape of a penis. So,
no phallic gunship.
Yeah, sadly, that's the best part about Kingdom Hearts. Just throwing it out there.
Okay. All right. So, moving on, the next point of the next thing I really want to talk about is Nintendo standards versus the entire video game industry in 2019. So, Nintendo's thought process was, this game isn't what it's supposed to be. We can't release it this way. We have to start from the beginning.
Right.
The rest of the video game industry is in 2019, especially if we're looking at Activision and EA specifically. And I hate, look, I don't want to be the guys that keeps throwing shade on Activision and EA. They have their own problems. But if this was Activision and EA, this game would come out regardless.
Right. They would have
like, finish it. It's only half complete and it's broken. Put it out.
Right.
Patch the game day one and microtransaction the fuck out of it if they want it fixed.
Right. And then they'd follow it up. Well, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Battlefield 5.
So, Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2?
Right. Because that's the way, so this is for if anybody's watching it and you're managing a product or like a marketing for it, key marketing. If, the fan base has a problem with your product, tell them not to buy the game. That is A+ strategy, works every time. 12 out of 10. So,
that just brings us so that's the question is, what Nintendo's doing by delaying the game entirely, it's more commendable than what EA and Activision do, but is it the right thing to do?
Right. I would have to say yes. Mostly because Nintendo, so let's just establish one thing first. For some weird reason, in 2019, 20 years later from the GameCube PS2 console war, right? Kids still think it's cool to hate on Nintendo because it's Nintendo, and I don't fucking understand why. It's like, dude, that is so 2000s. What are you doing? Get over it. Like,
yeah.
Right. So and one of the big criticisms that everyone throws at Nintendo because they're morons is, well, they've got the same IPs. They just keep releasing the same IPs over and over again. I'm like, yeah, sure, but they're all really good games. Right? And so if they don't have this quality control in there, then that would lead credence to that argument. Like, well, they're just releasing the same games, they're just trying to cash in on old IPs, and then, it actually gives weight to these arguments. So,
and ultimately, I think Nintendo's decision to delay the game, like, as much as waking up to that news bums me out, like, I think to myself, do I want to live in a world where Nintendo succumbs to the same fallacies that the other, AAA developers fall to? Like, is corporate greed like the way to go? Especially like, because and for Nintendo, it would be easy to just release the game and just try to make a quick buck off of it. Specifically because they're spending a lot of time just recovering from the 5 years that we had with the Wii U. Like, the Switch is on a good track and it's selling like crazy, and it has the highest attach rate of any video game console in this generation. That's really good news. But at the end of the day, there are still skeptics about Nintendo. people just do not trust Nintendo. It's been a long, hard road to for Nintendo to regain not only fan trust but also developer trust. Like EA still doesn't really want to make games for the Switch. You know, Ubisoft has been on the other end of the spectrum, is making a lot of great games for the Switch, but like it's been a hard road to like get people to trust what Nintendo can do. And I think from the fan standpoint, them delaying the game for a legitimate reason and saying that it doesn't meet our quality standard, that goes such a long way in reigniting fan confidence in what the studio can do. And for me, it worked to get them to put Nintendo in my good graces. Not that they were in bad spirits with me, but hearing that news just made me personally be like, I respect that decision.
Yeah.
Because it means I'm going to get a better game. Now, I may have to wait longer for it, but they were upfront. They were not upfront with Breath of the Wild. They were not upfront with that game. They just kept saying it was coming out, and then they'd say that it was coming out on a different day. And then when that day approached, like, oh, no, it's going to come out on a different day. And then as that date approaches, we're waiting because the Switch is coming out in like 7 months. So, yeah, good luck. Like, they took the lessons that they learned from the whole Breath of the Wild debacle, and they were like, let's just be upfront about it. And if you watch that video, it's not a short video. It's like 4.5 minutes of them really explaining why they are starting over.
Yeah, and there's a really cultural aspect in here too that most people don't really get. Well, I wouldn't say most people, but some people won't get it. Is that they didn't actually say I'm sorry. They didn't apologize, and that's just not something that they do typically, culturally speaking. One of the memes is that the Japanese companies will say, please understand, which is basically the implication is that we're sorry that you have to wait. They don't explicitly say it, but that's basically what it means. Thank you for your understanding, and we're sorry. Like,
yeah, no size here.
Right. So that is a thing that I know some people are gonna complain because it just doesn't mesh well with cultural expectations in America and other Western places. But that is what they're saying, even if they're not explicitly saying it.
So for me, what this means is it's two things, one good, one bad. So I guess I want to start with talking about the Metroid Prime and Metroid fan base. And we've talked about this before. Like, the original trilogy did not sell, miles, but they were fantastic games, and the fan base absolutely loses their minds over it. They've been waiting for Metroid Prime 4 for so long now, and on one hand, you have at least another 2 to 3 year wait, which isn't fun.
Well,
if you've been waiting so long already,
it may only be 2 years, but anyway, keep going.
I mean, yeah, I'm just ballparking.
Yeah.
Because it could be 2, it could be 3. You don't know with game development anymore.
Right.
Things like how long did Breath of the Wild actually take to make?
Right.
Breath of the Wild. But it's on the other hand, if you were to give these super passionate Metroid fans a bad product, I don't think that would go very well. And I think the whole point of them making Metroid Prime 4 in general isn't because it will sell at all. I think it's because the fans will love it. I think that's definitely why. But if the fans don't love it, it's a lose-lose for Nintendo. And so Nintendo has said, like, we want, we're acknowledging those Metroid fans. We gave you a 3DS remake. We're giving you Prime 4. We have, quote unquote, more down the pipeline. And so they're giving the Metroid fans what they want, which is huge just to be a Metroid fan. But when you only have, that remake in Prime 4 right now, and then Prime 4 isn't good, it's really not going to go over well. And so I think, to explain this, that this is what it's going to be, is huge just because of the fans specifically you're looking at for this game.
True that. Right. So overall, what this ultimately did, it was was it showed that Nintendo can actually be a pretty transparent company. And we can tie this back into, Activision EA.
Mm.
What Jaden just told us, was the way that they chose to handle poor reception to something was, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Whereas Nintendo was, this happened. This was not the ideal scenario for us. We wanted to have this game out in this time frame, but we have to start over. Shows you that Nintendo as a company has learned something that I think every video game company can learn, and that's just transparency. Learning to just be upfront and, being honest about the current situation. I don't think we've seen that from Nintendo before. That's a relatively new concept. This may have something to do with Nintendo undergoing a couple of different leadership changes in the last few years. We've seen 3 presidents in 5 years. Three presidents in 5 years. This could be just like the new president saying,
"We got to be transparent."
We got to get in front of this.
Right.
And that's refreshing, man. Like, personally, I find that to be extraordinarily refreshing. And I'm like, we've never seen Nintendo do this. And we damn sure have never seen another major first-party AAA developer be this, upfront about any type of delay or cancellation. And because this is kind of all of the above, because it is a cancellation and a delay at the same time. Like, they canceled the old product, but they're going to do something else. They're going to do it with a new team. Like, remarkably upfront by Nintendo.
And looking at Nintendo's history, I feel like for a cancellation, they've never actually said anything about it. They've just sort of just not talked about it and just let it be without, remember when the 3DS was announced, we were going to get 3D movies coming to the 3DS. And since that announcement, we've not heard anything. We've not gotten any 3D. We got Tekken 3D, didn't we? Well, you bought Tekken on the 3DS, actually, but that's different. That's completely different.
Well, and then don't forget the quality of life thing that they were working on for like a decade.
Right.
And then, but then looking at, I'm positive at this point, Pikmin 4 has been scrapped for not only for, I think it's very similar reasons where it was a product they weren't happy with, but also, looking at a Wii U era where it's not doing so hot. And so I think it was very, very similar to what we're seeing now, but we didn't have that transparency there. And people are still like, yeah, where's our Pikmin 4? I want Pikmin 4 so bad with all the rest of you, but I think it's been scrapped, unfortunately. That is my thinking here. Because it was not mentioned. It was, 2 years of development for Metroid Prime. It could have almost been done. Same thing with Pikmin 4. Pikmin 4 was almost done. And where is it? So I think it was very similar situations. With delays, Breath of the Wild was not getting scrapped. It just wasn't. But it was getting delayed. That was inevitable. And they at least told us, nothing about the delay, but they told us that, yeah, we're delaying it. We got that confirmation that it hadn't been scrapped.
Actually, the only time they officially announced it being delayed, game, was when they decided they were putting it on the Switch at the same time.
That's right.
Every other time they shifted the date back, so every promo video you saw would have a different because I remember the first one said 2015,
but you at least knew it was happening.
2016, and then in 2016, we're gonna put it out in, on the Switch. So wait a little bit longer.
I mean, but you're at least getting information which you're not getting here with Pikmin and those 3DS movies. That's the key thing that I'm thinking here. Well, it's not been. It's been mentioned,
I want to go back into this Nintendo versus the rest of the video game industry. Not a week before this was announced, the same week actually, EA canceled the Star Wars game. Within the same, it was within a 3-day time frame, we found out that EA had canceled their second Star Wars game in 2 years.
Because
they were doing the Visceral game, and then they shut down Visceral, and then the second, EA Canada, they were like, okay, we're gonna take the assets and we're gonna make a smaller game, and then They were like,
Right,
"Oh
right.
no, this game isn't going to come out in the time frame that we want, so we're going to cancel it."
Right, right. The first one was supposed to be some sort of bounty hunter one, and then that got scrapped, and then the other one was supposed to be some sort of open world one, and that got scrapped. So
yeah, and that was Amy Hennig, who was like, the mastermind behind the Uncharted series, working on that Visceral Studios game. So you'll start looking at this like, man, they're canceling a lot of Star Wars games, but then you look at it, they're just canceled. Like they're canceled, and they're not going to resume production in any way, shape, or form. Like we're closing these studios down so that they're permanently canceled, so that nobody can even think about coming out with a new game. Oh yeah, and that Knights of the Old Republic game that everybody wants, yeah, we're not going to give that to BioWare.
Right, which I'm kind of okay with because BioWare's a hot mess now. So, but in any case.
But yeah, I mean, like you look at their transparency and you compare them to the rest of the video game industry and where things are currently going, and it's remarkably Nintendo.
Right.
Nintendo has always had their own way of doing things compared to the rest of the video game industry, but this is the most Nintendo thing that they could have done, was to completely say, we're just not going to cancel the game and move on and just pray that you guys forget about it. We're going to cancel it and we're going to start all over again.
Right.
That's Nintendo.
Yeah, I think they learned a lot from the success of their Nintendo Directs. So,
one thing I actually want to continue this discussion and some other discussions later on, like a separate episode if you guys are down. But what is a gamer entitled to? I'd like to do like a sole episode on that if you guys are down. Like, what do we get for a $60 purchase? What do we get as fans of a series or a game? Transparency or not, or whatever. I'd like to maybe cover that in our own little thing at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
All right.
So, but yeah.
So just to get into this next bullet point, the fan perception of this news. So fanboys and fangirls in every fandom have one thing in common. There is always this outlier of toxicity around anything. Oh, well, this story didn't meet my demands, or this actor shouldn't portray this character, or this character isn't gay enough to portray a gay personality. There's stuff like that happening all the time, and there's like the word entitlement that you just used. What is a gamer
entitled to?
Entitled to?
Yeah, right.
That is something that gets really ugly.
Right.
And announcing a delay of a hotly anticipated title, even though we've already established that Metroid is not the big number mover. It's not. Metroid has never really been a console seller, but it's been long enough now that the fan base has grown rabid. Like it's been a long time since we've had a Metroid game, and it's understandable that the fan base is upset and frustrated. But when you look at the perception of this, it's remarkably positive. Like, if we go to the YouTube video that Nintendo officially uploaded, 15,000 upvotes and only 504 downvotes. I mean, they did disable comments. I mean, which they very smart that they disabled the comments. But 15,000 upvotes to only 504 downvotes.
Right.
That's remarkable. That means that yes, people are upset. And, if we go in deeper, we start looking at Reddit threads, we'll start to see a lot more of that vocal minority. But for the most part, Nintendo being transparent about the issue has been positive. That transparency paid dividends. And yes, their stock took a little bit of a hit, but that's only because they've sank millions of dollars into development, and there's going to be no return of investment. And a good investor would see that and make that same decision. Like, if you're not in it for the long term, and you've seen that the company just scrapped maybe $2, $3, $4 million on a project that is never going to see the light of day, you might take some of your money back too. But overall, like, the fan perception has actually been relatively the majority of the fan base of the people commenting in Reddit threads and the way that the video is getting upvoted, it's remarkably well. Like, this is Nintendo's transparency paid dividends.
Right.
Like, me as a fan of the Metroid series, when I found this news out, yes, was I bummed out? 100% bummed out because I was like, damn, I wanted that to be my Christmas game, you know?
Right.
But I'm like, well, what's on the horizon for the rest of the year? What do we know is coming out? Luigi's Mansion, Yoshi's Crafted World, Bayonetta 3 potentially. There's a couple games on the horizon that are like really interesting, and there's a bunch of indie games coming out that can satiate me until then. But yeah, just them coming out and saying the reason for this happening, I looked at that and I'm like, okay, I'm on board with this. I'm on board with this. This was a good decision. And it seems like a lot of people echoed that sentiment that I had, because 15,000 upvotes to only 500. Dude, that's like, that is huge. That's a big difference.
Right.
So yeah. So we only have like one more point to talk about. Now that this title's been delayed, what do you think the new timetable for this game is going to be?
Yeah, so that's a big, interesting question, and it depends how much they have to build from the ground up, right?
Yes.
If they've already got a pre-existing engine they can work on, then it could actually come out in anywhere between as soon as like 1.5-2 years. We could see it next Christmas. Not Christmas 2019, Christmas 2020. But that's a big if. That's like super optimistic. If they got to build literally everything from the ground up, it may take closer to
2021
years. Yeah. So it really just depends. I mean, the people who are still at Retro, they've got a few, which is great. But I think they'll do some really good stuff. They still got the Prime Series producer. The president and CEO is still the same. The director of production is still the same. And the principal animator is still the same. So they keep some people. And hopefully they'll be able to take their experience and apply that to this next thing. But who knows? It really just depends on the infrastructure, because we don't know what they've been working on.
True. No. Like we were talking about earlier, just depending on what that retro game was supposed to be, that unannounced retro game, be it the Star Fox Racing game that everybody's like super intent on, or something different. Like if they can use whatever assets they built for that unannounced game and apply it to whatever's happening with this new Metroid game, could be a shorter development cycle. It could still take up to 1.5 years. But that being said, to completely scrap the game and then put something out within 1.5 years
is impressive.
Well, that's a pretty quick turnaround, nonetheless. But that's only if that engine that Retro Studios is working on is applicable to a Metroid game.
Right.
So yeah, like just conservative guess for me, I'm thinking like either late 2021 or let's see, fourth quarter 2021 and first quarter 2022. If I'm being conservative, like if I'm being super conservative, I'm gonna lean towards the longer end of a development cycle.
Right.
I mean, you guys have kind of just stated what needs to be said already. You know, it depends on how much they have to work with at the beginning here. Do they have anything they can reuse from the completely scrapped project, or a engine that they already have working for this Metroid title? And I think that is going to be the key to deciding how fast this gets done.
Right.
One also, I guess, concern that I might have is that we've stated before, Retro is not a big studio.
Right.
Metroid is a fairly big game, or rather it could be, depends on how big they want to make it, I suppose. But I with most Western games, especially shooters, I feel like the standard right now, they're very big. And so I feel like we're going to see the push for it to be a bigger game. So that might in itself take time. I'm gonna assume, although I'd like it to take 1.5 years, I'm gonna say a standard development cycle of this would actually be about 3 years. And I'm gonna say we could get it in 2.5.
Right. I would be very concerned if it came out this Christmas.
Yeah. A rush game at that product.
Yeah, that would be really concerning to me. Come Christmas 2020.
A bit more understandable.
50 to 60 people on a team isn't that bad. I mean, it sounds pretty small, especially compared to like big studios like EA, but then when you compare it to some of the like indie dev studios that make games with like
Toby
10
Fox
people?
is one person. He's doing more. He got like a small group now, but like
Right,
only
right.
10 people.
So 50 to 60 is not bad. It'll be very
Well,
curious
think about
to
the
see.
fact that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 got developed with 40
Yeah,
and
yeah.
half
That
staff
too.
members.
Mhm.
So
40.
you can do it. It'll be
Mhm.
very curious to see if we see any like job postings on LinkedIn for retro or something like that. That'll be very curious to see.
Mhm.
But who knows? I think 50 to 60 is not a bad team, but that'll also be complicated by whether or not this rumored unannounced game is going to ever come out, if it's going to be put on back burner, if it's going to be a split team process, etc., etc. So, that they do have some complicated wheels that need to turn. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
As for let's just for the sake of transparency on our behalf, Retro Studios has the following job openings listed on Indeed: physics engineer, graphics engineer, art director, technical artist, graphics engineer,
Hey,
and physics engineer. So they have 2 job openings for physics and graphics engineers, and a technical artist job listing. Yeah. Don't know when these job listings were posted. Just for transparency, just for the hell of it, let's take a look when this was posted. It was over 30 days ago. So these are not new job listings.
Okay.
right.
very
But they
least.
could have, well, it depends how much. It could be in preparation for this announcement, So, very interesting.
Yeah, all these job listings are dated from December, before we got this announcement. Although we don't know how long Nintendo
Has
waited.
planned this.
Yes.
Right.
So considering that all these job listings are from 30 plus days ago, Retro might have known a little bit sooner than we all found out.
Right. I would hope so. Being sprung on that, like the day of, would be kind of shitty if I'm Retro.
Right. I mean, I imagine that they'd also have to work out all the deals. Like, hey, you're going to work on this game, and so this agreement might have been in the works, like early holiday season, like November, maybe even before that. So this may be something that's been that they've had some time to prepare with, which might be some good stuff. It might mean that we'll get it out sooner. So.
Now, maybe if that is the case, potentially Retro, wasn't the only candidate to receive custody of this project.
Right.
Maybe there were other contenders, and they thought, Retro could still do the best job looking at what Retro has got, maybe. So maybe going back to what we said earlier, like, we're not sure if they would still be the best bet. Maybe Nintendo looked at what they're currently doing and said they're still the best bet. Right. I could see that happening too.
I could follow that line of thinking.
But it's a wait and see game until it really comes out. Is just what we have to do. Wait and see.
Very much agree with you right there. All right. So let's wrap this show up and let's hit them up with our closing thoughts. Ultimately, I think that when it comes down to it, Nintendo completely did the right thing. As much as I think it sucks to think about this game not coming out this holiday season or potentially first quarter of next year, it's better than the alternative. It's better than watching Nintendo go down the path of an EA or an Activision. It's better than watching games just get outright canceled and not seeing the light of day, and watching the people who were in charge of the game move on to other studios or projects, or maybe even getting fired because of the level of incompetency that it took to waste X amount of money on a game. So I ultimately think this was a good decision by Nintendo. I do think Retro Studios is still probably the best team to go with, just because I can't imagine that they don't have like design documents of the first 3 Metroid Prime games somewhere in a little room,
file cabinet.
In a file cabinet, just like, hey, this is what the other guys had to work with. We can do this, blah, blah, blah. Like, I ultimately think that it was the best route. Nintendo's transparency with this matter really made a difference in the way that I perceive this delay. Like, I'm not angry about this delay. And I think this is the first time I've been able to say that a game delay didn't upset me or piss me off.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I think you nailed it on the head. They did the right thing with this. It was inevitable that it was going to be delayed at this point, and the transparency was the right call.
Right. So, that's pretty much I mirror those thoughts. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, guys, that's going to be our show. We will be back in 2 weeks with a brand new show. Maybe a little something extra if we have the time for it. I've been working on some more concepts. There's some stuff that we scrapped from this episode for brevity's sake because I really wanted to get into this topic because I think this is one of the best topics we've got a chance to talk about in a long time. So I was like, let's scrap some of the news because this topic is the news. But that being said, you know where you can hit me up on. You can hit me up on Facebook, facebook.com/Nintendo Power Zone. You can hit me up on Twitter at NYCEONE983. And you can hit me up by email, nice1983@gmail.com. Social media links, guys.
You can find me on Twitter at the King Blues. As always, King Blues spelled KingBlooz. Same thing for my YouTube and Twitch channels. Don't have anything up there yet, but working on it slowly but surely. I know it's been a long time coming. And then all you need to know other that is that Incineroar was buffed.
Right. All right. So you can hit me up Twitter at Jaden Winsong, and same thing with Twitch is also Jaden Winsong. So I'm consistent. So.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to be our show. We will be back in 2 weeks, so pay attention. We're going to have this content up on the on iTunes and Google Play within, say, 48 hours. And this video will be edited up on YouTube. You'll have a nice, clean, sexy version of it by tomorrow. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and remember to stay fresh.